Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the 15 Minute Book Club. The podcast is produced by Mr. Wilson.
Good afternoon.
And brought to the World Wide Web by Gavster of Yucatan. Every week we bring to you 15 minutes or thereabouts of book chat. And if you like what we produce, feel free to subscribe to this channel. We're on all major platforms and are looking to expand our current levels of production soon. And we've got news on that front coming in the next few weeks. Alright, this week we're looking at the autobiography of jazz saxophonist Art Pepper. The title is Straight Life. And Art Pepper was active as a musician between the late 1930s and the early 1980s. He was born in 1925 and his mother was 14 when he was born. She was only 14 and she was quickly becoming an alcoholic. His father, only slightly older, was also an alcoholic and both were abusive and violent. And he was quickly sent to live with his grandmother, who was emotionally cold, distant and difficult to live with. Art was damaged from the beginning and he spent the rest of his life dealing with the fallout of that abusive, neglectful childhood. Throughout his life he was plagued with addictions and with emotional fragility, but what saved him from absolute disaster was the simple fact that he was a gifted and natural musician. So from here on in, I'm mostly going to read from the book. I'm going to let Art describe his life, his addictions, his moments of creative brilliance and some of his many, many low points. Taking up clarinet at the age of 9, he quickly became able to hold an audience. Here he is describing his playing to his father's friends at a dockside bar. After I started playing the clarinet, my father would come and take me down to San Pedro, to the bars. I've been there lately and the place is all cleaned up, but at the time, down by the waterfront, the whole area was nothing but bars, and there were fishermen, Slavonians, Italians, Germans, almost every nationality was known in those bars. A few had entertainment, a beach strip show, but most of them were just places guys went to hang out and talk. They weren't the kind of bars women were going or that hustlers were at. They were men's bars. They'd drink and talk about fishing and the waterfront and driving winches and their problems with management. They'd talk about the union. They were real tough guys. They were all my dad's friends. He would take me to several different bars, sit me up on the bar and make me take out my clarinet and play little songs like Nola and Parade of the Wooden Soldiers and I Can't Give You Anything But Love. The guys would ask for other songs and I'd play them and they'd listen. My father would stand right by me and stare at them and nod his head like they'd better like it or he'd smack them in the mouth. And he was a big guy and he'd be drunk. I got the feeling I did like it because I was his boy. They're like boys. I was his boy. That's Art's lad. He plays nice music. Yeah, nice. Play that thing, boy. They'd pat me on the back. They'd grab my arm and shake my hand. Almost hurt my hand. They were so rough. You keep that up, boy. You don't want to be like us. And I was their child. I was all their children. You keep that up and you won't have to do like we do. And they would have fingers missing. And some guys would have an arm gone. Things would drop on them and they'd lose legs, feet, fingers. I could get away from that and be respectable and not have to get dirty and get hurt and work myself to death. And so they'd drop a dollar bill in my hand of 50 cents or a silver dollar. I'd end up with $15, $20 just from those guys and my dad never took the money from me. He said, that's yours. You earned that. I always felt scared before I played, but after I did it, I was proud and my dad was proud of me. Art was a naturally gifted musician and he worked hard to be as good as he could be. Even after he was drafted into the army, he practiced all the time. Here's English vocalist Jimmy Dean talking about his work ethic. None of the English saxophone players, there were some good ones, but they just didn't have it all together like Art did. I think perhaps one of the reasons I can't remember knowing anyone ever quite so dedicated to their music as Art was. Even when he was doing those awful MP things, walking around till 5 o'clock in the morning with a great white hat and a nightstick, he would grab a couple of hours sleep and a shower and go straight to his rehearsal room and practice his instrument for hours and hours with very little sleep. For him it was more important to maintain his ability and improve, and he did it studiously without any hesitation. No matter what else was going on, and that had to happen. And I always admired that tremendous ability he had to dedicate himself to his work. Despite his success, Art Pepper's inner demons never left him alone. Already a heavy drinker, Art describes the effect on him of the first time he took heroin. He says, that wandering and wandering like some derelict, the agony of drinking and nothing ever being resolved, and no peace at all except when I was playing. And then the minute I stopped playing there was nothing, that continual insane search just to pass out somewhere and then to wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, and to wake up and think, oh God, here we go again, to drink a bottle of warm beer so I could vomit, so I could start all over again, so I could start that ridiculous, sickening, horrible, horrible life again. All of a sudden, the demons and the devils and the wandering and the wondering and all the frustrations just vanished, and they didn't exist at all anymore because I'd finally found my peace. All I can say at this moment, I saw that I found peace of mind, synthetically produced, but after what I'd been through and all the things I'd done to trade that misery for total happiness, that was it, that was it. I realised from that moment on I would be, if you want to use the word, a junkie. That's the word they use. That's the word they still use. That's what I became in that moment. That's what I practiced, and that's what I still am. And that's what I will die as, a junkie. And though at the time he was only snorting, he was quickly encouraged to inject the drug into his arm. I said, I don't want to shoot it. I know if I shoot it, I'm lost. And the dealer said, you're lost anyway, man. Art's life became for a long time a seesaw of creative highs and, due to his drug use, incarcerated lows, where merely for having needle marks on his arm he could be sent to jail. Then as now there was a war on drugs. But throughout his life and despite his addictions, his playing was sublime. This is Sammy Curtis talking about Art's gift. Art was and is a great player. I'm not going to say the greatest in the world because I don't feel that any one guy is. But at the top of the gang is a select group of 5 or 10, just a few guys. When you get up that high on the ladder, you can't pick one as better than the other. That's where I place Art. He's one of those special guys. As to what made his playing so special, that's a hard question. And the only answer I can give, to be honest with you, I think it's a gift from God. I think it's not something that Art did. God loved him and he gave him this gift. But despite the gift, the darkness of the junkie world followed him. He describes at one point, shortly after getting out of jail, he discovered his wife had left him and he went to join a jam session. Immediately, as soon as I got there, I got hold of this guy, Henry, and I scored. And right after that, I went to a jam session with some of the guys at a place called the Blue Room in Santa Monica. I was playing and drinking and I got sick to the stomach and I had to vomit. So I went to the bathroom. Everybody at the place was guys that I knew, so I left my horn sitting on the stage. When I came out of it, it was gone. I said, did anybody see my horn? Nobody said anything. I said, man, somebody must have seen it. They all just froze. I looked everywhere. The case was gone. The horn was gone. One of them just stole it off the stand. And I thought, these are the kind of people I'm dealing with. These are my friends. For me, that's the low point in this story. Art knew he couldn't escape his life. He knew these were his people and this was his milieu. This was his destiny. A few chapters on he describes what it's like to go cold turkey while waiting in a holding cell to be imprisoned. You lie on a cement floor and people get sick. They're vomiting. I was sick before I got busted. I was sick before I went and hocked my horn. So I was deathly ill and it took 36 hours to be booked in. The agony of kicking is beyond words. It's nothing like the movies, The Man with the Golden Arm, or things you read, how they scream and bat their heads against the wall, and they give up their mother, and they want to cut their throats. That's ridiculous. It's awful, but it's quiet. You just lie there and suffer. You have chills, and your bones hurt, your veins hurt, and you ache. When water touches you, it feels as if it's burning you, and there's a horrible taste in your mouth. Every smell is awful, and becomes magnified 1,000-fold. You can smell people with BO, their feet and filth and dirt. But you don't scream and all that. Kill my mother, my father, just get me a fix and I'll do anything you want. That's outrageous. The depression you feel is indescribable and you don't sleep. Depending on how hooked you are, you might go 3 weeks or a month without ever sleeping except for taking a momentary spell when you just pass out. You'll be shaking and wiggling your legs to try and stop the pain in the joints, and all of a sudden you'll black out and you'll have a dream that you're somewhere trying to score. You'll get the shit in the outfit and you'll stick it in your vein, and then the outfit will clog, or the stuff will shoot out the rubber part of the dropper, or somebody will get in the way. Somebody stops you and you never get it into your arm. Art was aware of the horror of this situation and of his own part in his own downfall, and while in jail he got analysis, and he tells his story with a brutal honesty. I think it was 10 months that I was being analysed. I began to understand my parents. I learned why they couldn't get along. I understood why my mother didn't want a child. It was a hopeless situation. I realised that. And I learned all this, but it didn't change my feelings. I felt that I wasn't wanted and that I wasn't loved. And I sort of liked that feeling. It was an excuse for me not to do anything. An excuse for anything I might do that was wrong. I could say it wasn't my fault. Nobody cared about me, so they couldn't blame me for being antisocial or being a little strange. If I hadn't been so talented, it would have been easier. I would have been an outright failure and a bum or a real criminal. But it just so happened I was picked by something. Maybe I was reincarnated, but I have a genius that was given to me. I have a genius, however it's given. And I knew in myself that I was wrong in the things I was doing, and that made me feel worse. That made me feel guilty. I wasn't doing what I knew I should do, but the pattern was set. The mould was cast. It was just easy. It was fun, and I liked it. While in prison, however, Art was mostly protected due to him being a famous musician. And perhaps due to that, he was able to find a beauty in the darkest moments. Here he describes life prisoners who would never get out, singing, and that was their only escape from the brutality of their existence. They go to the penitentiary, they may never get out again. They've left the woman they love out in the streets. And here they are listening to this song, sung by a black man, listening to this sadness and this beauty. And I thought, where's the justice? Why do these things happen? Why do we do these terrible things? What causes us to do these things? Some black guys started humming along with Stymie, and it was so pretty and so sad that all the ugliness was forgotten and all the hatred, and for that short while we were like brothers. And that's why I talk about Sunday and God and the beauty of music. Everything was wiped away, and we were just human beings sharing a common sadness. At this point in the mid-1950s, Art Pepper was alternating spells in the penitentiary with massive critical acclaim. And between these two extremes, he would spend weeks, months at home, high or sick, and not playing at all. And then one day, his girlfriend announced that she'd arranged for him to record an album live with the rhythm section of the Miles Davis Band, the best rhythm section in the world, and he was completely unprepared. I wouldn't speak to Diane at all. I told her, get out of my sight. I got my horn out of the closet, got the case and put it on the bed and looked at it. It looked like some stranger. It looked like something from another life. I took the horn out of the case, and when you take the saxophone apart, there's the body piece, the neck and the mouthpiece. And these three pieces are supposed to be wiped and wrapped up separately when they're put in the case. Evidently, the last time I played, I'd been loaded, and I left the mouthpiece on the neck. I had to clean the horn because it was all dirty. I had to oil it and make sure it was operating correctly. On the end of the neck is a cork, and the mouthpiece slips over that. I had to put a little cork grease on it. I grabbed the mouthpiece and pulled. It was stuck, and then all of a sudden it came off in my hand. The mouthpiece had been on the neck for so long that the cork had stuck inside it, and on the end of the neck was just bare metal. It takes a good repairman 4 or 5 hours to put on a new cork. It has to set, it has to dry, it has to be sanded down, and I didn't have time for that. I was going to have to play with a messed up horn, and I was going to have to play with the Miles Davis rhythm section. They played every night, all night. I hadn't touched my horn in 6 months, and being a musician is like being a professional basketball player. If you've been on the bench for 6 months, you can't all of a sudden just go out in the game and play. It's almost impossible. And I realised that that's what I had to do, the impossible. No one else could have done it, no one else at all, unless it was someone as steeped in a genius role as I was, as I am, was and am, and will be, and always will be, and always have been, born, bred and raised nothing but a total genius. Ha! I walk in and I'm afraid to meet these guys because I've been playing with Miles and they're at the pinnacle of success in the jazz world. They're masters, they're practicing masters. But here I am and here they are, and I have to act like everything's cool. Hi, and what's doing? And hi Red, what's going on? And when the amenities are over and Les gets everything set up, the balance on the horn and all the microphones, then it's time to start making the album. Red Gardner is looking at me and my mind is a total blank. That's always been one of my faults, memory. I have a poor memory and I can't think of anything to play. Red says, well, I know a nice tune. Do you know this? And he starts playing a tune I've heard before. I say, what's the name of it? He says, it's called You'd Be So Nice to Come Home To. What key is it in? D minor. And it came out beautiful. My sound was great. The rhythm was great. And I remember reading the reviews by people like Leonard Feather, Martin Williams. They said, the way Art plays, the melody is wonderful. He's so creative. He makes it sound even better than the actual tune. Well, what I'm doing, I don't know the melody. I'm playing as close to it as I can get. And that's the creativity part. It does sound good because I play it with a jazz feeling. And it's like a jazz solo, but really, and trying to play what I remember of the song. I'm only going to read one more extract from this book. We're not quite at page 200 and the book is 500 pages long. It's brutally honest in places, and in some places it's just brutal. And if he were alive now, Art Pepper would no doubt be cancelled. His autobiography, Straight Life, could not be published because of some of the things he recounts in the book. And to be honest, the world would be poorer and less enlightened because of that. So I'll leave you with this extract, where during a gig he gets involved with a duel with fellow sax player Sonny Stitt. We played the head, the melody, and then Sonny Stitt took the first solo. He played, about 40 choruses. He played for maybe an hour. Did everything that could be done on a saxophone. Everything you could play. Then he stopped and he looked at me, gave me one of those looks. All right, sucker, your turn. And it's my job. It's my gig. I was strung out. I was hooked. I was drunk. I was having a hassle with my wife, Diane, who threatened to kill herself in our hotel room next door. I had track marks on my arm. I thought there were narcs in the club. And all of a sudden I realised that it was me. He'd done all of these things and now I had to put up or shut up or get off or forget it or quit or kill myself or do something. I forgot everything and everything came out. I played way over my head. I played completely different than he did. I searched and found my own way. And what I said reached people. I played myself and I knew I was right. And the people loved it and they felt it. I blew and I blew. And when I finally finished, I was shaking all over. My heart was pounding and I was soaked in sweat. And the people were screaming, the people were clapping. And I looked at Sonny, but I just kind of nodded. And he went, all right. And that was it. That's what it's all about. Straight Life, the story of Art Pepper, by Art and Laurie Pepper, is by turns grimy, harrowing and transcendent. Art Pepper never glorifies his addictions, but he tells it with searing honesty. And it's worth a read. So that's all from the 15-minute book club. We'll see you next week for something completely different.